People always ask when my fear started. The night I heard someone whisper through my air vent, or the morning I found photos of myself pinned inside my attic. But the truth? My fear began 3 years before that, in a forest in Colorado, when a bear nearly ended my life. I survived, but something inside me didn't. After the mauling, I developed a deep fear of enclosed spaces, and worse, the feeling of being watched. Even therapy couldn't erase the sensation that someone might be standing just behind me. By 2017, I wanted a quieter life, so I moved to Willow Peak, Oregon, a misty, pine-covered town where nights were so silent I could hear my heartbeat. I bought a small cabin on a gravel road, isolated and old. The realtor mentioned the previous owner, an elderly man named Arthur Hale, had left suddenly. I didn't ask why. I just wanted peace, but peace never came because someone else never left. The cabin felt charming at first. Pine floors, a big stone fireplace, and a narrow hallway with the attic door hanging above it. I tried not to think about how dark it was up there. The attic ladder's rope dangled low, like it was waiting for someone to pull it. My dog, Maple, adjusted quickly, until the second night. Around 3 a.m. she growled at the ceiling, her hackles raised. I sat up in bed listening but heard nothing. Still, Maple wouldn't look away from the attic hatch. The next morning I found the front door unlocked. I was certain I had locked it. Day 3, the pantry light flickered on even though the switch was across the room. Day 4, a wooden music box appeared on the fireplace mantel, something I had never owned. Then food began disappearing. A yogurt cup, half a block of cheese, grapes. I blamed stress, moving, bad memory. Anything that made more sense than the truth forming slowly in my mind. Someone was in the cabin. But the moment everything shifted was a Saturday night. I was editing photos when Maple jolted up, staring at the ceiling again. Then, thump. A slow dragging sound. Another thump. Footsteps. Directly above the living room. My breath caught. I grabbed my camera tripod like a weapon. Then came a whisper through the air vent, soft enough to freeze me in place. "Not your room." The words slid into me like ice. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By dawn, fear had turned into a kind of anger. I couldn't keep pretending I imagined everything. I pulled the attic ladder down and climbed. The smell hit first. Sweat, old wood, stale food. Then the sight. A nest of blankets pushed into a corner, half-eaten apples, empty water bottles, and old receipts from stores in town. Someone had been living here, but the worst part was the row of photographs pinned to a beam. All pictures of me, taken through the cabin windows at night. Sleeping, cooking, talking on the phone, working at my desk. Every moment I thought I was alone. My hands shook as I backed down the ladder. Maple whined, pacing circles. Before leaving the attic, I noticed something else carved deep into the wood. "Stay still. I watch better when you're still." I bolted, grabbed Maple, ran out the door. Halfway to town, I reached for my phone. Gone. Then I saw the Polaroid left on my truck's dashboard. A photo of me sleeping the night before. Someone had been in my truck too. By the time I reached Sheriff Evelyn Wren's office, I was shaking. She listened quietly until I said my address. Her expression changed instantly. "I told them not to sell that house," she muttered. "What is that supposed to mean?" I asked. Before she could answer, her radio buzzed. "Intruder reported at 41 Willow Peak Road." My house. The boarder, as I later came to call him, had returned. Deputies surrounded the cabin. Evelyn kept me outside, one hand held out like she already knew what was inside. After several minutes, a deputy called down from the attic. "Sheriff, you need to see this." When Evelyn returned, her face had drained of color. "It's empty," she said. "He's gone." "But he was here less than an hour ago," I argued. Fresh footprints in the snow proved it. A window upstairs had been opened from the inside. In my bedroom, the music box, the one that had appeared without explanation, sat on my pillow, playing its broken melody by itself. Then, a deputy's voice echoed from under the bed. "Sheriff, we found something." He pulled out a duffel bag filled with older men's clothing, medicine bottles, and shoes labeled with one name: Arthur Hale, the previous owner. I stared at Evelyn. "He never left, did he?" She shook her head. "We searched for him when he went missing months ago. He must have been living in this attic for years." Years, meaning he might have been there long before I moved in, meaning he watched the last owner too, meaning he'd had all the time in the world to learn the secrets of the house. "You're not staying here another night," Evelyn said. I didn't argue. I couldn't. The sheriff's office gave me a motel room for the night. I didn't sleep. Every sound made my chest tighten. Maple curled against me, trembling whenever footsteps echoed outside the thin motel walls. 3 days passed. Deputies searched the woods but found nothing beyond camping debris and footprints that disappeared into the trees. It was like Arthur had dissolved. On the 4th morning, an envelope slid under my motel door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single note. "You moved, but houses aren't what I follow." And tucked behind it was a photograph of the front door of my new apartment, taken at night from inches away. A chill ran through me so deep my knees almost buckled. I called Evelyn immediately. She sent 2 deputies to sit outside, but even with them there, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Arthur standing just outside my window, waiting for my lights to go off. For the next year, I moved again, and again, and again. Camera systems, new locks, security patrols. None of it mattered. Because every October, the anniversary of that whisper through the vent, another envelope arrived. The letters were always the same. A single photo, each one taken from a place Arthur shouldn't have been able to reach. One showed me in a grocery store aisle. Another captured me kneeling to tie my shoes outside my apartment. One was taken through the blinds as I watched TV. The last letter came in October of 2022. It contained only a single photograph. Maple sitting in the living room, ears perked, staring at the front door. Behind her, half-shadowed in the hallway, was a thin silhouette. Shoulders hunched, head lowered, watching. He'd been inside again. I checked my security footage. All cameras had gone dark for 5 hours. No error message, no power outage. Just black screens where Arthur should have been caught. That night I realized the worst truth. My fear had never been irrational. I wasn't scared because of the bear attack. I was scared because somewhere deep inside, I always felt someone watching me. And I'd been right. The border was never the house. It was him. And he is still out there, patient, invisible, waiting for the one moment I let my guard down. Because he doesn't want to kill me. He wants to watch me. And he's getting better at it. Listen to your instincts. Fear isn't always a weakness. Sometimes it's the only thing warning you that something is terribly wrong. Pay attention to the small signs, the things that feel off. And remember, danger doesn't always break the door down. Sometimes it lives quietly above you, waiting for you to stop paying attention. In the fall of '98, my family moved into a rental house on Maple Hollow Road in Grayford, Vermont. My stepfather Leon called it a reset. I didn't believe in resets. Not then. Not after the year we'd had. My mom's business collapsed. My biological father walked out in the middle of the night and never came back. My little sister Emmy started having nightmares, and I developed a fear of dark hallways that made sleep nearly impossible. The house was old, sagging slightly under the weight of its own history. It sat back from the road, half hidden behind pine trees that swallowed sound. Inside, the floors groaned under every step. But the thing that stuck with me most was the attic door at the top of the stairs, nailed shut with 2 rusted nails. The landlord said it was just storage. Leon said every old house had quirks. Mom was too tired to care. The first night, I woke to a thin bar of light stretching across my bedroom floor. I thought I'd left my lamp on, but the glow wasn't coming from my room. It was coming from the attic. The light flicked on and off, steady as breathing. 2:17 a.m. I stared at the glowing crack under that nailed-shut door, telling myself it was faulty wiring. But the timing, every single night, always 2:17, felt deliberate. A week later, Emmy told us a man had been knocking on her bedroom window. "He said he likes my drawings," she whispered. Leon checked the window. Locked. No footprints. But the next morning, the ground under her window had muddy impressions shaped like boots. "Probably kids messing around," Leon said. I wanted to believe him, but I'd started hearing things too. Scratches inside the walls, soft tapping beneath the kitchen sink, footsteps on the porch when the rest of the house slept. Then, one day, coming home from school, the old woman next door, Mrs. Hollinger, stopped me. "If you hear tapping on your back door after midnight," she said, "don't open it, even if it sounds like someone you know." I asked her why. She only shook her head. "Some things are better left closed." I didn't understand her then, but I remembered her words, especially later, when the tapping began. 2 weeks after we moved in, the attic light stopped flickering. It stayed on, constant, bright, like someone had settled up there. The scratching inside the walls grew louder, not like mice, more like fingernails dragging along wood. It paused when I paused, moved when I moved. One afternoon, I saw the attic window cracked open from the outside. A cold breeze drifted through it, though no one had touched it since we arrived. Inside the hallway, I pressed my ear to the wall. The scratching stopped, then resumed. Closer. "Probably squirrels," Leon said when I told him. But squirrels didn't breathe. And that night, just as I drifted off, I heard footsteps move across the roof above my room. Heavy ones, slow, deliberate. Then, a voice outside my bedroom door. "Caleb, open up, it's me." My stepfather's voice, except Leon was working out of town. The hallway light was off, but I saw a shadow shift under the door. I held my breath. The doorknob twitched. Then I heard a sound I recognized from movies, a pocket knife clicking open. Click, click, click. The attic light snapped off. The house fell into darkness. Then came the creak of the back door downstairs. Someone had entered our home. I grabbed my bat and ran to Emmy's room. She was already awake, clutching her rabbit, crying silently. I pulled her into the closet. Footsteps moved through the kitchen, drawers opening, cabinets slamming. A man's voice calling softly, "Margaret, I just want what's mine." Mom was asleep on the opposite end of the house. The intruder climbed the stairs. His voice drifted into the hallway. "Caleb, you almost found it. It's in the attic. You kids should have stayed asleep." Emmy trembled beside me. I realized then, someone had been living in that attic long before we moved in, watching us, listening, waiting, and now he thought I knew where it was. The intruder stopped right outside Emmy's closet. I saw his shadow through the crack near the floor. "Kids," he whispered, "I know you're in there." The door handle twitched. Then, Mom's bedroom door slammed downstairs. The man turned and sprinted back toward the stairs. This was our only chance. I whispered to Emmy, "We're going out the window." We opened her window and climbed onto the drain pipe Leon meant to fix. It rattled under our weight. Emmy slipped. I grabbed her wrist. We hit the ground running. Behind us, the intruder stormed through the house, shouting, "You took it! Bring it back!" We didn't look back. We ran barefoot through the cold grass toward Mrs. Hollinger's house. I banged on her door until my knuckles bled. She opened instantly, as if she had been waiting. "In," she said. "Now." We stumbled onto her rug. She locked every door and pulled every curtain tight. "What did you hear?" she asked. I told her everything, the voice mimicking Leon, the breathing under my door, the attic light going dark. Her expression didn't change. "He's been in that house a long time," she said quietly. "Longer than any of you." We didn't have time to ask questions. Sirens approached. Police searched our home while Mom sobbed in the driveway. Upstairs, they found a thin mattress hidden behind insulation empty cans, a flashlight, a pocket knife, and dozens of photos of us taped inside the wall. Pictures taken through windows, through vents, through cracks in the attic boards. The intruder had been watching us for weeks. Mom insisted we leave immediately. We were gone by sunrise. But the fear didn't leave with us. It followed. Our new house was small but safer, with neighbors close and clear views of every window. For a while, we pretended it was over, but trauma doesn't disappear. Emmy slept with her lights on. Mom jumped whenever the floor creaked, and I woke at 2:17 a.m. every night without fail, heart pounding, expecting the attic light. Leon tried to be logical. "Trauma plays tricks on your brain," he said. Maybe he was right, or maybe fear had roots. A few weeks after we moved, an envelope with no return address arrived. Mom tossed it aside, but when I picked it up, it felt wrong. Too stiff. Inside was a single Polaroid, the attic light of our old house, glowing 2:17 a.m. I hid the photo. If Mom saw it, she'd break. 2 days later, I heard her crying quietly in the kitchen, trying not to wake us. The move had drained our savings. Therapy bills were stacked under magnets on the fridge. Fear was expensive. I started sleeping with my bat again. Sometimes I heard scratching in the walls of the new house, sometimes tapping at my window. I told myself it was in my head, but deep down, I knew better. Someone doesn't watch a family that closely unless they plan to return. It happened in March. I woke at 2:17 a.m. The room was still, unnaturally still. A faint light glowed from my desk drawer, the same drawer where I'd hidden the Polaroid. I forced myself out of bed. My legs felt hollow. When I opened the drawer, the glow vanished, but the Polaroid was warm, warmer than it should have been. A new message had been written on the back. Fresh ink, still damp. "Checked your new place. Nice neighborhood." I dropped it. My chest tightened so hard I nearly passed out. He had been here, inside our new home, close enough to touch things in my room, close enough to watch us again. I wanted to tell Mom, but how do you tell someone that fear has a new address? We moved again months later, and again after that. Eventually, life spread us out across different towns, different homes. But sometimes, even now, I wake at 2:17 a.m., and I swear the shadows in the hallway shift the way they did in that old house on Maple Hollow Road. I never found out what he was looking for, but I know this. He wasn't looking for an object. He was looking for us. And some people don't break into homes to steal things. They break in to watch. The dangers you ignore are often the ones that grow strongest. Always trust what feels wrong. Fear is sometimes the only warning you get. Coming back to 1247 Haverhill Ridge Road felt like walking into a frozen version of my childhood fear. My sister Grace said we needed to clear out Mom's house before the bank pressured us, and I couldn't keep giving excuses from my photography work at sea. But the moment I stepped onto the porch, the same old paranoia crept around my ribs. When I was 9, a man had broken into the house. Dad chased him off with a bat, but the fear stuck with us. He barely slept afterward and eventually left the family entirely. I grew up believing it was my fault because I'd forgotten to lock the back door that night. Grace greeted me at the foyer with a tired smile. 3 days, she said. Then we're done. 3 days, I agreed. But the house didn't feel empty. It felt paused. We started boxing up the kitchen. Neither of us brought up Mom until later, when the sun was already down and the living room had only one working lamp. Grace said, "We should just sell this place quick." I shook my head. "We need time to go through things properly." "It's not a shrine," she snapped. "It's a house." "And it's Mom's house," I said, too sharply. She let it go, but tension stayed in the room afterward. That night, the house groaned like it had lungs. Pipes hissed, floorboards crackled. I lay in my old room staring at the ceiling while something tapped lightly above me in the attic. The same spot, the same rhythm I remembered from childhood, the sound everyone dismissed as branches or settling wood. But houses don't pace. I told myself to grow up. That fear didn't get to own me anymore, but I barely slept. In the morning, Mrs. Talbot from down the ridge came by. She'd known our family forever. "I saw a dark van parked across the road the last 2 nights," she said. "Didn't look familiar." Grace frowned. "Maybe workers?" "No workers come out here at night," Mrs. Talbot said. "Just be careful." After she left, Grace said, "You don't think—" "No," I cut in. "It's nothing." But later, at 9 that night, I found the back door cracked open. "I closed that," I said. "You locked it," Grace replied. "I heard you." I pushed it shut, unsettled. The wind didn't open deadbolts. Before we could argue, every light in the house snapped off. The sudden dark swallowed us whole. Grace grabbed my arm. "What was that?" I checked the breaker panel. Nothing seemed wrong. 15 minutes later, the power returned without explanation. The house felt different afterward, too still, like someone had paused everything inside it. We tried sleeping again in separate rooms. I heard the attic tapping start up, lightly, patiently. Grace's room stayed quiet, but I kept imagining someone standing just on the other side of her door. At 11:42 p.m., scrolling through family photos on my laptop to distract myself, I heard footsteps on the gravel driveway. Slow, measured. I turned off the laptop and stared out the window. No car, no movement. Then the sound of the kitchen door unlocking echoed through the hallway. No one but me had that key. I grabbed my metal photography tripod and moved quietly toward Grace's room. Before I reached her door, I heard her whisper, "Elliot, someone's outside my room. I can hear them breathing." My stomach dropped. It was happening again, not a childhood memory. Not trauma, something real. From downstairs, floorboards creaked under deliberate steps, multiple sets. Shadows moved past the dining room doorway, 3 figures in slow formation. They didn't stumble like burglars. They moved like they had been here before. I stepped back onto the staircase. Snap! The loose board my father always warned us about gave way loudly. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched for a heartbeat. Then all 3 rushed toward the stairs. I swung the tripod at the first man who emerged. It hit his shoulder, sending him backward. Another grabbed me by the shirt and slammed me against the railing. He was strong, calm, and efficient, and he held a knife. "Stay still," he said. His voice was tired, like this wasn't his first home invasion. A third man appeared behind him, holding zip ties. My blood went cold. They weren't here for things. They were here for us. Grace screamed from her room. Not hurt, terrified. All 3 men turned toward her voice. I shoved the man holding me, ripping free just long enough to sprint into the bathroom. I locked the door and dialed 911, whispering the address as quietly as I could. The operator said, "Stay where you are. Officers are en route." But through the wall, I could hear Grace sobbing as the men pushed against her door. I couldn't stay in that bathroom. I opened the small window, climbed out onto the porch roof, and crawled along the shingles until I reached Grace's window. I swung the tripod hard and shattered the glass. The men froze. I climbed inside. One grabbed Grace by the wrist. I tackled him, slamming us both into the dresser. He slashed at me on his way out, leaving a burning line on my arm. The other 2 bolted down the hall. Outside, sirens wailed closer and closer. The men scattered, one out the back door, the others through the yard and into the woods. One fell over the fence but kept limping into the trees. Grace collapsed against me. I held her until police stormed in. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then, the fear settled in. Not of what had happened, but of what we didn't know yet. Police searched the house top to bottom. Then Officer Ramirez called us over. "You'll want to see this," he said. He led us up to the attic. My skin crawled the second the door opened. Cold air spilled down the steps. In the far corner lay 3 sleeping bags, empty food wrappers, bottled water, a portable charger, a small notebook. Someone had been living above us, for days, maybe longer. Ramirez flipped open the notebook. The first few pages contained crude sketches of the house, then detailed notes. Lights on-off patterns. Basement door rarely used. Sister alone, Tuesdays/Thursdays. Attic noise must stay minimal. A page marked with an older date read, Mother, daily routine. Grace covered her mouth. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Someone watched her, Grace whispered. For how long? We're looking into it, Ramirez said. Police dusted the attic for prints. Later, Ramirez returned. We matched one fingerprint, a man who worked for a moving company your mom hired about 4 years ago. I remembered that day. 2 movers going up and down the stairs while Mom rearranged furniture after Dad left. One of them must have seen how isolated the house was, the woods, the distance to neighbors. He remembered, and he came back. All the taps I'd heard over the years, maybe even when I was a kid, weren't the house settling. They were footsteps. The police couldn't find the men in the woods. They'd vanished. The house felt smaller with every passing minute. Grace shook uncontrollably. I wasn't much better. That night, we slept at a motel. I kept picturing the attic above us, listening, waiting. We sold the house within a week. Didn't even go back to gather the rest of Mom's things. The real estate agent took inventory with the police present. I never wanted to set foot inside again. The motel wasn't much more comforting. Every creak made me jump. Grace barely slept. I tried to be steady for her, but the fear had settled deep in my bones. One morning at breakfast, she asked, "Do you think they came after Mom?" I exhaled slowly. I hope not. But you think it's possible? I didn't lie. Yeah, her eyes filled. Why us? I didn't have an answer. Some people choose victims for reasons that make sense only to them. Convenience, opportunity, obsession. Maybe one of those men had seen our house years ago and never forgot it. Fear is strange like that. It roots itself in tiny cracks and waits. Grace started therapy. I supported it. I went once, but talking about the attic made my throat close. The therapist said trauma returns strongest in places that once felt safe. I don't know if this house ever was. I returned to my work at sea a month later, but nights were different now. Every sound in a ship corridor, every footstep in the hallway, it all brought back the tapping above my childhood bedroom. One night, unable to sleep, I realized something about fear. It wasn't weakness. It had saved us. For years, I thought I survived the first break-in because I was lucky. Now I understood the truth. I survived because danger had been circling our family for decades, and the fear I carried from childhood had never left. For a reason. It was trying to warn me. Sometimes fear is memory. Sometimes instinct. Sometimes it's the past telling you it isn't finished yet. I still hear those soft attic steps in my dreams. Maybe that's my mind replaying trauma. Or maybe it's reminding me that evil doesn't always knock. Sometimes it waits quietly above you. Trauma isn't erased by ignoring it. Listen to your instincts, respect your fear, and confront the past before it finds another way to return. I used to think moving thousands of miles away would solve everything. After my breakup with Trevor, the kind that leaves bruises you can't photograph, I packed what I owned, grabbed my dog Junie, and headed to Juneau, Alaska. I told everyone it was a fresh start, but really, I just wanted to disappear where the world felt too big for someone like Trevor to follow. The rental cabin I found sat alone between evergreens with a porch that creaked even when the wind stood still. It wasn't pretty, but isolation felt like a blanket I hadn't realized I missed. I worked remotely as a book cover illustrator, spending nights awake drawing with headphones on. grateful for the quiet. The quiet didn't last. It started as a scraping sound outside the back door, always around midnight. Soft at first, like something dragging slowly over I-20. I told myself it was nothing. Alaska was full of noises, shifting snow, falling branches, animals that didn't bother asking permission to get close. But on the fifth night, taking the trash out, I saw footprints leading straight to my back door. No prints leading away. For several minutes I stared at them, holding my breath until it hurt. When morning came, new snow buried the prints, and I forced myself to believe I'd misread them. My therapist used to say, "Not every fear is a prophecy, Nora." I tried to believe her voice more than my own. A week later, Caleb Marsh appeared, a wildlife photographer, or so he said, with a camera slung around his neck and a grin he wore like a sticker he couldn't peel off. He claimed he came to the area often for fox photos. Maybe that was true, but he always showed up at weird moments, right after the nights with scraping, right after I'd left my cabin only briefly. "Sleep okay?" he asked often, as if it were part of a script. "Yeah," I'd say, lying each time. Junie never liked him. My dog isn't hostile, but whenever Caleb approached, she pressed against my leg, ears low. Dogs sense things. I should have listened sooner. The real trouble began January 18th. The temperature had dropped so low it felt like the air was made of glass. Around 8 p.m., a pounding came at my door. When I opened it a few inches, it was Caleb, face flushed, hands red raw from the cold. "Hey, sorry," he said, breathing hard. "My Jeep died down the road. You have jumper cables?" Something was off. His smile didn't reach his eyes. His jaw shook like he was bracing himself. I handed him my cables through the cracked door. He leaned in too far, trying to see inside. "You live pretty quietly," he said. "Yeah, I like quiet." He lingered another beat before finally walking off into the dark. Junie growled until he was out of sight. The next night, the scraping changed. It wasn't random anymore, not like shifting ice. It was deliberate, slow, measured. Junie stood rigid, staring at the back hallway. When I turned to look, the doorknob was moving. Just slightly. Just enough. Someone was turning it. My breath snagged in my throat. I waited, frozen, for what felt like 10 minutes. Then the knob eased back to stillness. When the police came, I felt foolish explaining it. The officer who spoke with me said, "Ma'am, doors shift in winter. Expansion makes the handles move sometimes." I wanted to scream. Handles don't turn on their own. But I didn't argue. I just locked the door twice that night. The next evening, Caleb returned, knocking hard enough to rattle the frame. He didn't smile this time. Instead, he held up my missing sketchbook, one I hadn't seen in days. "Found this outside," he said. "Thought you'd want it back." Something inside me snapped awake. There was snow on the knees of his jeans, wet, packed in, as if he'd been kneeling outside my cabin. And tucked inside his jacket, partially hidden, was a metal pry tool. I didn't open the door fully. "Thanks. You can leave it on the porch." He shook his head. "You should come out for a second. I want to show you something behind your house." "No," I said, louder than I meant. He stepped forward and shoved his shoulder against the door. I caught it just in time, slamming my weight into it. The cold wood vibrated between us. Through the crack, he whispered, "You weren't supposed to be awake last night." Everything inside me went cold. The scraping, the doorknob, the footprints. It had all been him. I locked the deadbolt and ran, through the kitchen, onto the counter, shoving open the small window above the sink. The frame sliced my palms as I hauled myself out into the snow. Junie scrambled after me. Behind me, Caleb began kicking the front door. I sprinted barefoot across the freezing yard toward the only neighbor in shouting distance, an elderly woman named Sandra who lived 2 houses down. I banged on her door with both fists. "Please, someone's breaking into my house." She opened the door in shock, pulling me and Junie inside as I collapsed to the floor. When the police arrived minutes later, Caleb was gone. My front door hung open, cracked near the lock. Snowy footprints trailed through every room. In my bedroom closet, officers found a camera hidden inside a plastic bag. Its lens pointed directly at my bed. Footprints behind the cabin matched Caleb's. His Jeep, abandoned on a trail. His rental cabin, empty. His gear, gone. For the next month, I barely slept. Every knock at the door made my stomach twist. Every stranger's jacket looked green like his. I kept telling myself he'd fled, that he was hundreds of miles away. But fear doesn't care about logic. It breathes on your neck whether someone is there or not. On February 22nd, a package arrived. No return address. No note. Just my sketchbook. The same one he'd held the night he tried to force himself inside. A new drawing had been added. It was my cabin, my bedroom window, drawn from outside at midnight. A figure stood in the snow, watching. The drawing wasn't cartoonish or rushed. It was accurate, detailed. I could see the angle of the window frame, the shape of the curtains, details only someone standing directly outside could capture. I left Alaska the next morning, packed everything I could fit into my car and drove south until the air didn't taste like fear anymore. But even now, months later, I still check every doorknob before bed. I still wake up at 11:48 p.m., the time the scraping used to start. Junie still growls at random shadows like she's remembering something she can't explain. And sometimes, when the wind moves against the house just right, I swear I hear that slow, deliberate dragging on my back porch. I don't know where Caleb is, but I know he isn't finished. Never ignore the small things that make you uneasy. Your intuition is often the first alarm your safety relies on, and the one most people regret silencing. Most people imagine peace when they picture a quiet, modern house at the end of a newly built street. I imagined the opposite. The silence made my skin crawl, because 2 years earlier, someone had tried to break into our old home while I was alone. They didn't just jiggle the handle, they rattled it for minutes, steady and patient, like they were testing me. The police never found who it was. Ever since then, silence felt like a warning. When my parents left for a weekend conference in Seattle, I thought maybe it was my chance to prove I wasn't afraid anymore. I was 20 now. I didn't want to be the kid who checked locks twice and slept away from windows. So I decided to throw a party. It wasn't even a big plan, just a way to fill the house with people and noise. By 9, the place was crowded. Music shook the windows. People danced in the living room. Others drank on the deck. My friends, Emma, Kyle, and Brody, helped me pretend I wasn't worried about every footstep or door swing. For the first hour, everything felt normal. Then Emma walked over at 10:06 p.m. with a look that tightened my chest. "Lucas, did you invite someone wearing a gray hoodie?" she asked. He was standing at the tree line, just staring. My stomach dropped. "No. Did he talk to anyone?" He didn't move, just watched. Before I could check, the motion light on the shed flickered. Someone laughed it off as an animal. I tried to do the same, but the old fear I thought I'd buried stirred awake. Little things started stacking up quickly. The side gate, latched earlier, was open. Someone swore the bowl of keys by the door fell on its own. A couple guests mentioned seeing a guy in a gray hoodie slip upstairs. I tried to brush it all off. Parties were messy. Things moved. But when Kyle rushed over looking pale, everything inside me clenched. "Dude," he whispered, "someone's in your parents' bedroom." I didn't want to believe it, but every part of me knew something was wrong. We went upstairs and found the bedroom empty, but the closet door slightly open. Inside hung a wet gray hoodie. I didn't recognize it. I didn't want to touch it, but I knew exactly what it meant. Someone had been inside the room, and they hadn't left the house yet. Before we could decide what to do next, a crash thundered from downstairs, loud enough to cut the music mid-beat. People screamed. Others ran. We rushed down to find the sliding glass door cracked from the outside. A web of fractures spread across it, as if someone had slammed into it with full force. "Everyone stay inside!" I yelled, though my voice cracked. The motion lights outside flickered again, unnerving in their rhythm. On, off, on, like someone pacing. Then the first man appeared. He stepped into the dim blue glow of the LED lights. Tall, sweaty. Dirt streaked across his clothes like he'd crawled through the woods. His eyes were wide and unfocused, as if he hadn't slept in days. He didn't look like a guest. He didn't look like he belonged anywhere near a house. Dozens of people froze. He muttered, almost to himself, "You locked me out again." The words sent a chill so deep it felt like my bones tightened. He spoke as if he lived here, as if I'd locked him out of his own home. My voice trembled. "Sir, you need to leave." He looked straight through me like he didn't hear. Before I could move, heavy footsteps descended the stairs behind us. The second man emerged, older, wearing a torn jacket, holding something metallic in his hand, a crowbar. He didn't panic. He just scanned the room slowly, almost calmly. People screamed. Someone bolted for the back door. Others pushed toward the hallway. That's when I realized something terrifying. These men weren't lost. They weren't confused. They'd planned this. My first instinct was the garage door. It had its own exit. Maybe we could get out. We pushed through the panicked crowd toward the hallway, but when I hit the keypad, sparks flew out. The wiring had been smashed deliberately. "They disabled it," Kyle muttered, horrified. People jumped from the deck into the yard to escape. Others ran upstairs and locked themselves in rooms. I didn't know where to go. Every exit felt compromised. Then I remembered the crawl space behind the washer. It wasn't much, but it was hidden. "This way," I said. We shoved the washer aside and squeezed into the tight space. Me, Emma, Kyle, and Brody. It smelled like dust and detergent. My heart hammered so loud I was sure someone outside would hear it. Footsteps entered the laundry room. One of the men said, "He knew?" The other answered, "Take what we can and go." They rummaged through drawers. A broom fell, hitting the wall next to us. Emma gasped, and I clamped my hand over her mouth. Seconds dragged like hours. Every sound felt too close, too deliberate. Then, faintly at first, siren. The men hurried toward the back door and vanished into the woods before police reached the driveway. We crawled out, shaking. Some guests were crying. Others sat on the floor in shock. The officers moved quickly, clearing the house, checking rooms, searching the perimeter. But the real horror wasn't inside the house. It was waiting outside. An officer asked me to walk with them behind the house. My legs felt weak, but I followed. We passed the shed, stepped into the trees, and moved down a narrow trail. When the officer pointed a flashlight at a small clearing, my stomach dropped. There was a campsite. Blankets, food wrappers, footprints, tools. They hadn't just broken in. They'd been living behind our house for weeks. A small notebook lay open on a blanket. Inside were sketches of my home, angles, doors, windows, blind spots. And on one page, a short list of local houses. Next to my address, easiest entry, young, alone. Wait for noise. I stared at the words until my vision blurred. My party, the noise, they had planned around it. They thought it would help them slip inside unnoticed. Ironically, it was the chaos that scared them off. If the house had been quiet, if I'd been asleep, I had no doubt things would have been much worse. When my parents came home, they didn't yell about the party or damage. They only held me, shaking, repeating, "You're okay, that's all that matters." But I didn't feel okay. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every time the motion lights turned on, I jolted awake. Every creak in the house felt like footsteps. I tried therapy, tried grounding techniques, tried telling myself the intruders were gone. But the memory of the first man haunted me. "You locked me out again." Those words stuck to my skin. Like he'd been there before. Like he believed the house belonged to him. And the second man, silent, deliberate, holding that metal tool, felt even more terrifying. He didn't speak much, but the way he scanned the house said he knew exactly what he wanted. The police never found them. Their campsite was their only trace. No fingerprints, no names, no background. They dissolved into the woods the same way they emerged, silent and unpredictable. Even now, months later, I walk through the house differently. I pause at windows before closing blinds. I double-check doors without thinking. I avoid the back deck at night because the woods feel like they're watching back. People say trauma fades. Maybe it does eventually. But some nights, when the wind shifts or the house settles, I think I hear the faint echo of someone pacing near the shed. And my heartbeat returns to that crawl space, tight, fast, desperate. I don't know if the men ever found another house, another quiet street, another kid who thought he was safe. But I know this. The night at the end of the street didn't end when the men ran. It stayed with me. It still stays with me. And sometimes, when the motion light flickers in that too familiar rhythm, I swear I hear it again. You locked me out again. Never ignore the feeling that something is wrong. Instincts exist for a reason, and staying aware of your surroundings can be the difference between safety and danger. True protection begins with paying attention, even when you wish the world was harmless. I used to believe fear was something you outgrew, like a phase, a bad haircut, or a childhood superstition. But some fears stay. They linger in the corners of rooms, in the quiet hours before dawn, in the places you don't want to look. My name is Mara Ellison. And when I was 15, a masked intruder broke into my childhood home. My younger sister and I survived by hiding inside a laundry hamper while the man moved through the house, opening drawers and whispering to himself. By the time police arrived, he was gone. They never caught him. My sister healed. I learned to sleep with a hand on a flashlight and an ear tuned for footsteps that never came. For years, I pretended I was fine. By 29, I'd become a freelance illustrator, working nights, sleeping days, living quietly. When I moved into a loft at Dockland Wharf in East London, I told myself it was a new start. 12th floor, good view, supposedly secure. It didn't feel secure. The elevator clanged like metal bones rattling together. The hallway lights flickered. My only neighbor, an older man named Mr. Calloway, liked to murmur that the upper floors were built wrong, and that some parts of the building weren't on any map. I wrote it off as eccentric chatter until small things started happening. Every week, around the same time, someone slid a thin white envelope under my door. Always blank. No handwriting. No clue who left it. I tried ignoring it. Tried telling myself it was a mistake. But fear has a way of growing roots. On October 19th, 2018, everything snapped. It was a little after 2:15 a.m. And I was finishing digital edits on a client piece. Just another quiet night. Then someone knocked on my door. 3 taps. A slow drag of knuckles across the wood. The sound froze me instantly. No one visited that late. Not even the reckless college kids on the lower floors. I walked to the peephole. No one was there. But the hallway motion light, wired to turn on only when someone walked directly in front of my door, was glowing. Then I heard a whisper. "Open the door, Mara." My father's voice, except he'd been dead for 9 years. I stumbled backward, breath caught in my throat. My phone buzzed, my building's security app. Door sensor triggered, 12B. I opened the camera feed. The angle caught only a shoulder, someone standing deliberately out of view of the lens. The knocking resumed, harder this time. Before I could react, another sound came from behind me. A faint metallic scratching at my back door, the fire escape entrance I never used. 2 doors, 2 angles, 2 people. I clutched my metal drafting lamp like it was a weapon. My pulse hammered so violently I thought I might faint. The scraping continued at the back, while the front doorknob rattled like someone testing its strength. I whispered to myself, "Not again, not again." The memory of that masked intruder flashed through my head. His breathing, the creak of floorboards, the helplessness. My phone chimed again. Bedroom window sensor, activated. Every weak point in the apartment, front, back, window, being tested one by one. They knew where everything was. They knew my name, and the voice, whoever it belonged to, copied my father's tone with uncomfortable precision. The doorknob at the front door jerked sharply, followed by the harsh scrape of metal tools. Someone was cutting the chain. I needed to escape. The maintenance ladder outside my balcony was slick with London rain and barely up to code, but it was my only chance. Keeping low, I unlocked the balcony door as quietly as possible. Inside the apartment, a metallic snap echoed. My chain had broken. I bolted through the balcony and gripped the ladder with shaking bare hands. My feet slipped on the cold metal, scraping skin off my toes, but adrenaline forced me downward. When I reached the landing 2 floors below, I made the mistake of looking up. A tall, thin silhouette stood on my balcony, perfectly still, watching me with a patience that felt inhuman. I ran, down the emergency stairs, through the exit, and into the lobby where 2 security guards sat half asleep. "There's someone in my apartment," I gasped. "They're inside. They broke in. They knew my name." The guards rushed upstairs with me trailing behind, heart pounding. But when we entered my apartment, everything was normal. My front door was closed, chain intact, no signs of forced entry, no footprints, no lurking intruder. Only the balcony door remained open, swinging slightly in the draft, and on the kitchen counter lay a single white envelope. Inside it, a printed message. "You're still not alone, Mara. The quiet hours are when I move." I moved out before sunrise, but the quiet hours didn't leave with me. In my new apartment, smaller, closer to people, more alive with city noise, I tried rebuilding a sense of safety. I installed new sensors, new locks. I told myself Dockland Wharf was the problem, until the first email arrived. October 19th, 2:17 a.m. Blank. Untraceable. The following year. Subject, soon. I didn't sleep that night or the next. Eventually, the stress forced me to seek therapy, though even there I avoided the full truth. How do you explain to someone that the monster under your bed knows your father's voice? One night, my sister visited with her boyfriend. We ate cheap takeout and tried to pretend life was normal. Around 9:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a new email. Subject, soon. Timestamp, 2:17 a.m. UTC. Hours early for me. I showed them. Their faces tightened. Her boyfriend tried reasoning with me. "It's probably some sick prank, someone spoofing emails. You said people in your old building were weird. Maybe a neighbor figured out your schedule." I shook my head. Nobody knew my father's voice. Nobody knew the layout of my apartment. Nobody could be at 3 entrances at once. My sister squeezed my hand. "We'll figure it out. You're not alone anymore." But later that night, lying in bed, the words didn't comfort me. At 2:17 a.m., I woke instantly, as if something had tugged me out of sleep. Then I heard it, the soft dragging inside the wall behind my bed. Slow, measured, intentional. I pressed my ear to the wall. The sound stopped. Then, soon. I ripped myself backward, shaking uncontrollably. The next morning, I confronted the building manager. He sent maintenance. The worker who arrived, Mr. Whitaker, knocked on my walls, listened with tools, then frowned. "This section is hollow," he said. "A bigger gap than normal, and it looks like someone rebuilt part of this wall at some point." "Rebuilt why?" I asked. He didn't answer. My phone buzzed again. Subject, the wall. I didn't open it. Before either of us could say more, a heavy thud slammed from inside the wall. Dust trickled from the ceiling. Another thud followed, deeper, almost like a punch. Mr. Whitaker jumped back. "Someone's in there!" Then came a whisper. "Mara." I grabbed a bag and left without locking the door. I drove straight to my sister's house, hands trembling on the wheel. She listened to everything and insisted we call the police. For once, they took it seriously and searched my apartment. But they found nothing. No signs of tampering, no wall cavities large enough for a person. They documented the oddities but couldn't explain them. I stayed with my sister that night, too exhausted to fight sleep. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Subject: "Here, inside." You can hide behind their walls, Mara, but walls are only as safe as the people who built them. I got up, heart pounding, and checked the house. Everything seemed normal. I went to my sister's bedroom to wake her. The door creaked open. The room was empty. The window was open. Curtains swayed in the faint night breeze. "Amanda?" I whispered. Silence. Panic surged through me. I stepped inside and stopped dead. A figure stood at the far end of the hallway. Tall, thin, completely motionless. My throat tightened. "Where's my sister?" The figure tilted its head. Behind me, from the empty bedroom, came my sister's voice. "Mara!" I spun around. Nothing there. When I turned back to the hallway, the figure had vanished. I screamed for my sister and her boyfriend until they came running from the garage, tools in hand. They'd been fixing a loose shelf. Terrified, confused, and very much unharmed. The police came. Again. Searched. Again. Found nothing. Again. But one officer returned with a thin white envelope. "We found this," he said quietly, "inside the bedroom window frame." It had no stamp, no markings. Inside, a single line. "The quiet hours follow you." I moved again. New state, new job. I don't tell anyone my address. I avoid top floors, long hallways, and walls that sound too hollow. But every October 19th at 2:17 a.m., an email appears. Sometimes empty, sometimes with one word. Soon. I don't pretend to understand what follows me, whether it's a man, a pattern, a presence, or something that has learned too much about fear. I only know that the quiet hours are not empty. They never were. Fear grows strongest in silence and isolation. The more we hide from it, the more power it gains. But facing it, seeking help, speaking out, trusting others, can break the patterns that chase us. We survive not by being alone, but by refusing to be silent. The first time I saw 47 Calder Street, it didn't feel like a place anyone would fear. It was a 2-story Portland townhouse with cedar siding, a lazy wind chime on the porch, and an herb garden that smelled like rosemary and old summers. I had agreed to house sit for my colleague, Marissa Gable, while she flew across the country for a 2-week research trip. She needed someone to feed her old cat, Biscuit, and keep an eye on her prized collection of antique radios. At 27, I worked as a freelance sound designer, meaning my life rotated between deadlines, noise editing, and long hours of silence afterward. Silence was tricky. Too much of it reminded me of my old apartment, the one I left after an ex-tenant started leaving angry notes on my door and pacing the hallway at night. He blamed me for reporting his erratic behavior. Eventually he left, but not before I had one bad panic attack that convinced me to move. So when Marissa offered me 2 weeks in a quiet home near the ocean, I said yes fast. I told myself I needed a reset, new walls, new sounds, a place that didn't hold echoes of those footsteps I used to hear outside my door at 3 a.m. During the first few days, the house really did feel like a retreat. I worked in the living room while Biscuit slept on top of my laptop bag. I cooked simple meals, listened to the ocean wind press against the siding, and walked the backyard that bordered a patch of woods. Even the neighbors were the type who nodded politely, but didn't ask questions. But little things unsettled me. A motion light in the back flickered even when nothing moved. A few of the radios clicked on at odd times, whispering static before shutting off again. Biscuit hissed once at a dark corner of the hallway. Hair puffed, eyes locked on something I couldn't see. I tried brushing it off. Old house, old wiring, old cat. My nerves were the problem, not the place. I kept telling myself that until the first night I heard the dragging sound. It was just past 11:40 p.m. I was editing audio, fine cutting a track, when I heard something outside the kitchen door. A metallic scrape, like someone pulling a pipe or crowbar across gravel. I muted my headphones and listened. The sound came again, slow, deliberate. I felt a jolt of nerves. I wasn't a stranger to late-night noises in apartments, but this was different. This felt intentional. I moved cautiously to the kitchen window, pushed one slat of the blinds aside, and stared out. The backyard was empty, except for the motion light casting a weak cone of yellow. At first I saw nothing unusual. Then my eyes adjusted, and I noticed them. Footprints. Fresh, leading from the alley to the back steps, then returning in the exact same path. Perfectly overlapped, like someone had stepped backward in their own tracks to hide where they had gone. A cold tightness wrapped around my ribs. I grabbed Biscuit and checked each door, each lock, convincing myself some dog or kid had wandered through. But it didn't feel like that. Those prints were too clean, too deliberate. The next evening, almost the same time, I heard floorboards creak on the front porch. The sound was soft but unmistakable, someone shifting their weight. I stepped toward the frosted glass and saw the silhouette of a tall figure, broad-shouldered, motionless. "Hello?" My voice cracked slightly. The figure moved, not away, not toward me, just out of sight. No footsteps followed, no car engine, nothing. By the time I opened the door, the porch was empty except for the faint smell of ocean wind. I called Marissa. I didn't want to alarm her, but I wanted confirmation. Was there anyone who might drop by without warning? "No," she said immediately. "No one has a key except me and you. If anything feels off, call the police." I told her it was probably nothing, a shadow, a trick of the light. But that night, unease settled into the house like a cold draft, lingering in every hallway. Around 2:17 a.m., Biscuit's growl pulled me out of a heavy sleep. He was planted at the bedroom door, ears back. Then I heard them. Heavy footsteps downstairs. Slow, purposeful, not shuffling, not stumbling, walking. My heart hammered against my ribs. I immediately thought of the notes left at my old apartment. Slanted handwriting, short messages like "I know where you are" that never made complete sense, but carried a threat in their silence. The footsteps continued through the hallway. The rhythm felt familiar, horribly familiar. Same slow pacing I once heard through a thin apartment wall. No, couldn't be him. That made no sense. I got up quietly and turned the bedroom lock. I pressed my ear to the door. Wood creaked. The footsteps stopped. Then, a dragging sound began. Metal scraping against a wall. I backed up, pulse roaring in my ears. The scraping stopped outside the bedroom. The doorknob turned. Someone exhaled on the other side. A calm, patient breath, like they could hear my fear and were savoring it. I whispered, "Please go. Please, just go." A second later, the door burst inward with a violent crack. Splinters flying across the floor. A masked man stepped into the room. He wore dark clothing, hood up, face completely covered except for angry slits cut for eyes. He held a baseball bat. I thought he would come for me, but he didn't. Instead, he swung the bat into the dresser, smashing drawers to pieces. He shattered the lamp, ripped apart the mattress, tore down shelves. Every movement precise, cold, focused. He was tearing the room apart for a purpose I didn't understand. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to make myself small. He didn't look at me at first. Not until he had destroyed nearly everything. Then he turned, slowly, his mask tilted like he was studying me. I froze, waiting for the strike. But he didn't move closer. He simply stared a moment longer, then walked out with the same calm steps he'd walked in with. I heard the back door open and close, then silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. The police arrived 20 minutes later. I tried explaining everything, but my voice kept cracking. An officer walked through the house, shining his flashlight across the wreckage. "Looks like vandalism," he said. "No signs of theft." Another officer knelt beside a long scratch running down part of the hallway wall. "You said he dragged something?" "A bat," I said. "But that mark looks deeper." They took notes, photographed everything, and asked about Marissa, whether she had enemies, whether I did. When I mentioned my old apartment, the ex-tenant, the notes, their faces changed slightly. Interest, maybe suspicion. "Any chance someone followed you here?" one of them asked. "I don't know," I said. "It's been months. I moved. I haven't heard anything since." "That doesn't necessarily mean they stopped," he replied. That stuck with me. Before they left, they told me to stay somewhere else for the night. I went to a cheap hotel 2 miles away, slept with the lights on, and kept checking the door every 15 minutes, even though I knew how irrational it looked. The next morning, Marissa called from across the country. I told her everything. She started crying. Fear for me, fear for her home, fear that someone had targeted the wrong person. "Lucas, I'm so sorry," she said. "Please don't stay there anymore. Please." "I won't," I promised. 2 days passed before I gathered my things and returned to my own apartment. I wasn't excited to be back, but at least it was my space, my locks, my familiarity. I told myself the worst was over. My apartment felt strangely smaller than I remembered. I dropped my bags on the floor, exhaled, and took a few minutes just standing there, letting the familiar walls ground me. I checked the windows, the deadbolt, everything. Finally, I walked into the kitchen to make coffee. And that's when I heard it. Static. Soft, crackling, unmistakable. I followed the sound into the living room. One of my antique radios, one I had left unplugged for weeks, was on, its dial glowing faintly, whispering static through the speaker. My stomach dropped. Next to it, resting neatly on the kitchen table, sat a single slip of paper. The handwriting froze me where I stood. Slanted, hard-pressed, exactly like the notes from months ago. Just 3 words, "Nice new place." My knees went weak. I felt the same cold tightness around my ribs that I had felt looking at those footprints in the gravel. Whoever broke into Marissa's house hadn't made a mistake. He had never been after her. He had been after me. And now he wanted me to know he was still watching, still following, still able to walk in and out of my life as quietly as a shadow. I sat down slowly on the floor, the radio crackling behind me, and realized my old fear hadn't been paranoia. It had been preparation. The footsteps from my past had finally caught up. Ignoring early signs of danger doesn't make you safer. It only gives the threat time to grow. Trust your instincts, protect your boundaries, and speak up early. Silence is the one thing fear loves most.